My friends, a very long time ago, it was back in the 1940s, a guy by the name of Kenneth Robeson wrote a novel. It's called The Hate Genius. It was about Adolf Hitler. The Hate Genius. But, it's 80 years later, and we have hate geniuses in the world today, unfortunately, and they're all to be found on the left, especially in the Democrat Party. What am I talking about? I'm glad you asked. Item from the Daily Wire. On Sunday, after Hamas had launched hundreds of rockets indiscriminately at Israel and murdered Israelis while wounding scores of other Israelis, anti-Semitic Representative Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Democrat, Minnesota, attacked Israel once again, blaming Israel for shooting, quote, protesters and insisting that Israel was occupying Gaza, unquote. Well, fortunately, there are people in the world who are not hateful, but instead are intelligent and value the truth. And here was one, Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney. She saw that tweet from Ilhan Omar, and she tweeted the following. Number one, Hamas controls Gaza. Number two, Hamas is firing rockets at civilians in Israel. And then number three, hashtag Ilhan Minnesota, she's a representative from Minnesota, is defending Hamas. Real question is, how many times will Ilhan Omar rush to the defense of terrorists? Unquote. Yeah, we have hate geniuses, and they've learned to ally themselves with the liars and the hate geniuses in the media. Yeah, I know. You can tweet without any network getting involved, and tweets are bad enough. But the left-leaning media, the MSNBCs and the CNNs and the CNNBCs and the ABC, CBS, all of them, the whole rotten bunch of them, they will give a platform, not just to Ilhan Omar, but Rashida Tlaib and a whole bunch of other haters, and enable them to spew pollution out into the world, pollution in the form of hate and lies. Israel minds its own business. It treats its Palestinians better than Arabs throughout the Middle East are treated. Better standard of living, free education. There are Palestinians in the Knesset, in the Supreme Court. Palestinians are citizens of Israel. And then the Palestinian murderers and terrorists fire rockets, close to 700 rockets. I started the show yesterday talking about these rockets. Imagine these rockets falling on your city. Palestinians fire 700 rockets at the Jews. The Jews retaliate, as anybody would. And Ilhan Omar is right there on the side of the terrorists. And so I want to know, how the hell does vermin like this get into the House of Representatives? They can only get there by being voted in. And so once again, for the umpteenth time in the history of Riell Truth, I am pointing the finger at the American voter. If you didn't know what Ilhan Omar was, how filled with hate and racism she is, well, then you shouldn't have voted. And if you did know exactly what kind of spider she is, and you voted for her anyway, you need to find a different country, because you're not going to like living here. So we've got anti-Semites like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, both Democrats. And then you've got the Democrat Party itself as a whole refusing to censure them by name for their anti-Semitism. They passed some kind of bogus, gauzy statement a few weeks ago about hate. Democrats have come out against hate. Well, la-dee-da. The Democrats are propagating hate. The Democrats spew hate. And if they really meant that they were against hate, they would eject Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, I should say, from the Congress. And they won't. And they'll cover their asses. Because the very currency that the Democrats use is hate and class envy and division. The worse things are in America, the more Democrats smile. Ilhan Omar should be kicked out of the House of Representatives, so should Rashida Tlaib. And the fact that they aren't is a black stain on the government of the United States of America. Speaking of stains on our government, item from the Hill. Progressives are taking shots at Joe Biden, seeking to blunt the former vice president's rise in polls by arguing he's too conservative to be the party's presidential nominee. The criticism has come from rivals to Biden on the campaign trail, as well as liberal groups seeking to put a dent into his poll numbers. They're casting Biden as an establishment figure out of touch with the grassroots of his party, highlighting his work on the Clinton-era crime bill and the Iraq war, among other issues, unquote. My friends, the whack-ball extremists in the Democrat Party happen to be right. Joe Biden is out of touch with the most extreme elements in the Democrat Party, which is why he's as good as dead in the water. What they don't point out, but which I've pointed out many, many times, is that Joe Biden is the premier horse's rectum in Congress, has been for 4 decades. The man is a fool. He's done nothing. He lied, made racist statements about Barack Obama before becoming his vice president. How that managed, I have no idea. Joe Biden is a fool. He hasn't accomplished anything. 40 years in Congress, what has he done? Go ahead. Tell me what he's done. This is a call-in show, right? 877-254-7524. Call into the show and tell me what has Joe Biden accomplished in all his years in government. You won't. Because you can't. Because he hasn't. He's an old white guy. And the Democrats don't like that. So he's done. He's a fool and a hack politician, part of the hum. And so he's done. Heard someone say on TV today, Biden won't be in the race very long, and I happen to agree. He'll be gone. He's already a non-entity. And that's the Democrat Party. That's what you, if you vote Democrat, are supporting with your vote. You got to do better than that, folks. And if you're watching me on the computer or listening to me on the radio, I expect you to. It's Riell Truth. It's Tuesday. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back. Howard Riell Truth. You know, I talk an awful lot about Judeo-Christian values and culture, and it's important to know that the people who hate Jews hate Christians too. The Muslims despise Christians, which may be why they're burning churches all over the Middle East and Europe. Well, here's something from an episode of Season 2 of Vice, that's a show on HBO. A guy named Thomas Morton joined a group of born-again Christians as they toured Israel and found out the real reason why they support Israel. Fascinating stuff. Let's listen.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict
This is Shane
the
Smith.
Point of geopolitical instability in the Middle East since the establishment of Israel in 1948. Although the vast majority of the international community, the UN, and the United States publicly support a two-state solution to try and end this conflict, after decades of negotiation, the final settlement has never been reached. And tensions between the Jewish state and the Arab world continue to fester. Throughout this process, America has remained firmly behind Israel as its greatest supporter. In fact, Israel receives more U.S. foreign aid than any other country in the world. Now, much of this support has been attributed to a strong, wealthy, and very pro-Israeli lobby in America, which is true, but you'd think that the majority of the strength behind this lobby would be the Jewish community in the U.S., which is only partially correct, because as it turns out, in terms of sheer numbers, the evangelical Christians from America's Bible Belt make up the majority of this lobby's power base. So we sent Thomas Morton to find out why a bunch of born-again Christians from Texas are so in love with the nation of Israel.
This may be the most important prophetic spot in the entire Bible, because the final act of the book of Revelation is going to begin right here at this place. The Bible teaches that Russia, Iran, Ethiopia, Libya, Turkey, and other nations will come down under a UN flag, and they will invade Israel at this particular point. Can you imagine? Thousands of tanks out here in this valley, rumbling, fighting, firing. Can you imagine jet airplanes screaming overhead? The battle is going to be fierce.
The horrific multinational fighting this preacher is describing is the Battle of Armageddon, which is supposed to happen right here, just as soon as Israel is a fully Jewish state. Which is why a bunch of Christians in Texas have become the most fervent Zionists on God's green earth. While most Americans probably think that the pro-Israeli lobby is largely a Jewish thing, actually most of its support comes from right here in the Bible Belt, where evangelical Christians overwhelmingly believe that Israel has a right to exist because God said so.
Go to the phone right now and call that number and say, yes, I'm going to stand with Israel. I'm going to bless the people of the Bible. I'm going to bless God's chosen people.
Will those of you in this audience who support the state of Israel stand to your feet and give a shout of support?
While a lot of Israel's financial support does come from Jewish wallets, there are close to 70 million evangelicals in America versus less than 14 million Jews worldwide. And given that roughly 80% of these Christians support Israel, that makes American Christians the largest pro-Israeli voting bloc in the world, about 4 times the size of the Jewish community on Earth. There's a lot of money behind the Christian Zionist movement. This church behind me, Cornerstone, is one of the biggest supporters of Israel, not just among Christians, but in the world. The pastor here, John Hagee, has raised an estimated $70 million over the course of his ministry. Pastor Hagee also founded Christians United for Israel, or CUFI, which is the largest pro-Israel lobbying organization in America, even bigger than AIPAC, the organization most people assume dominates the American Israel lobby because it's the biggest Jewish one. What's dicey about CUFI is that a good deal of their money for Israel is spent on buildings and organizations in the Israeli settlements. These are massive Jewish communities built well within Palestinian territory.
Stop! Stop! Number 1, nothing dicey about it. Number 2, there's no such thing as Palestinian territory. The money is built on settlements in the state of Israel. The settlements are in Jewish land. There is no Palestinian people. They're a bunch of itinerant Arabs who happened to be in what was then called Palestine when the Jews began to come back. But the idea, you see it reflected very clearly right here, the idea that there's an Israel and there's a Palestine somehow has wedged its way into the public consciousness, and it's not the truth. The people who run Israel, for God knows what reason, probably because they were liberal communists when they founded the state in 1948. They were socialists and communists, didn't believe in God. They just wanted to get the hell out of Europe. They didn't have the oomph, the wherewithal, the power or the inclination to get the Arabs out of Israel. They were happy to live shoulder to shoulder with their Arab neighbors and be good people. Well, it didn't exactly work out because the Arabs didn't want to be good neighbors. The Arabs wanted to kill the Jews. The Arabs wanted to conquer what was then called Palestine. They wanted to do it all of themselves. And if you get on your trusty computer, look up the Arab attacks against Jews long before there was an Israel, going back to the 1920s, 1929, and the 1930s. How the Palestinians sent their leader to confer with Hitler to bring the Holocaust to Palestine. So the lie, the calumny, that there's Palestinian land in Israel, and there's a problem because the Jews are building on it, is a complete hoax. It's nonsense, and I'm glad this dimwit said it so I can set the record straight. There is no Palestinian people. There is no Palestinian land. Palestinians live in Gaza, the West Bank. I should say they infest Gaza. They get hundreds of millions of dollars from supporters all over the world, and they still cry because they're living in squalor. Well, they're living in squalor because they're lowlifes. They don't want to live better than that because then they might lose sympathy and lose more money. Meanwhile, between 600 and 700 rockets fired into Israel. That's the Palestinians. Let's go a little bit further and see what other outrages we uncover in this video. He just said, you couldn't actually hear it. He said the settlements have been built in violation of international law. Well, international law can kiss my Jewish ass. International law has nothing to say about Israel, any more than it has to say about the United States. What if the UN got together and said, you know what? We're giving Colorado to Saudi Arabia. From now on, it's Saudi Arabian territory. And that will be international law. How about that? You okay with that? You go out and buy some burqas for your women, who, by the way, will no longer be allowed to drive? It's ludicrous. International law governs mercantile trading between countries. It doesn't say this land no longer belongs to you. And by the way, that comes from the UN, which has been virulently anti-Semitic since day one. Well, hang on one second. That's true. Giving land back to the Palestinians, giving land to the Palestinians would be a violation of God's law. It would also be a violation of common sense. When someone's trying to murder you, commit genocide, you don't help them. You don't reward them. Here's Pastor Hagee. He's correct. Check the Bible if you don't believe your humble host, Howard Riell. God gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people in perpetuity, forever. If the Palestinians don't like that, they're free to go into a room all by themselves and blow themselves up. But Israel belongs to the Jews. Anyone doesn't like it, well, get used to it.
Well, there's nothing wrong with Christians supporting Israel. The way these Christians have chosen to do so puts them firmly on one side of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
That's right. They're on one side of the conflict. They are on the side of good and of God. Well, that's the side I'm on also. They've chosen a side. And it's good versus evil. They side with good. Problem is, I don't mean to pick on liberals. Well, yeah, I do. Liberals look for a middle ground between good and evil. Well, we'll pick something in the middle. It's evil, but it's not that evil. It's acceptably evil. It's an evil we can live with. Liberals are fools. You don't live with evil. You destroy evil.
Directly opposed the U.S. government's official policy.
Yeah, first of all, there is no peace plan. There's a genocide plan because dividing Israel into two nations would basically sign the death warrant for Israel. Palestinians know this. That's what they want. All the talk of a peace plan, a two-state solution is all nonsense. It's all working towards the destruction of Israel. I'm not even going to finish this video. I wanted you to hear this so that I could expound on it, which I have. But know this, my friends. If the Palestinians put down their weapons, there'd be peace. If the Israelis put down their weapons, there would be slaughter. And that's what you need to know about what's happening in Israel. Item. For Breitbart, Facebook received a lot of attention for overt censorship last week, but the social network is engaging in covert suppression of independent media too, most recently with its introduction of ClickGap, a way of favoring established websites and suppressing non-established ones. The ClickGap system will penalize websites that have an established, quote, authority outside Facebook, where, quote, authority is measured by the number of clicks they receive from sources outside the platform, such as mainstream media sources, unquote. My friends, Facebook is rapidly becoming Big Brother. Item from Breitbart. Police arrested a 51-year-old woman for profaning Poland's most revered Catholic icon, the Madonna of Częstochowa, by painting an LGBT rainbow halo around her head and that of the baby Jesus. Stop. Now, I really don't like picking on liberals. Well, yeah, I do, but here's an LGBT activist, and she feels, her name is Elizabeta Podlesna, she feels that in order to get her message out, she's entitled to do whatever she feels like. Here is a Catholic icon, a revered work of art, and she painted over it. Why? Because she's allowed to. She's entitled. I just told you, she's a liberal. She's pro-LGBT, which means she's better than you and me, and any atrocity she wants to commit is okay because she's entitled. I am also from Breitbart. The University of Georgia may expel a teaching assistant and a graduate student who went viral in January after saying, quote, some white people might have to die, unquote, in order to achieve racial justice, among other racially charged statements, for allegedly omitting his arrest record from his admissions application. My friends, this is another example. I hate to say it. I hate to be right all the time, but what can I say? There's another case of liberals who do whatever they feel like doing. In this case, saying white people are going to have to die. Now, they're allowed to say it because I just mentioned they're liberals, and so they're on a more righteous plane than we are, and they get a pass. Certainly they get a pass in the media. Why do you think I yammer on so about liberals? They're very, very dangerous people. And we have to realize that they are vying with us for power. Well, we can't let them have it. I've told you many times, don't ever, 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 ever vote Democrat again as long as you shall live. We'll be right back.
power grid, and even the cars we drive. In the event of a massive power surge or an electromagnetic pulse in the atmosphere, this could render the country completely helpless. The president has just signed the first executive order to identify problems with critical infrastructure in the USA and prepare the United States in the event of a PNP event. The power and water may come back on, but your home and all of your computer-managed devices may be ruined forever. EMPShield.com has the solution. They offer the world's first full EMP protection device made in America. They can protect your home, office, auto, solar, RV, camper, generators, and the list goes on and on. The American Freedom Network, you can enter our call letter KHNC into the order code box and receive additional listener discounts. It pays to listen to KHNC. Go to EMPShield.com and find out higher ratings, older ratings, nation ratings, basic, medical apps, and so much more. You don't want to need to gold and silver. As a Patriot Rating Group, part of their advertising company, we have no commission salespeople, no boiler room sales calls, no high-priced postage. We believe in treating you with honesty and respect and delivering you the best product at the best price. Buying or selling, call us at 800-951-0592 or go to our website at allamericangold.com.
All right, guys, we're back. Howard Riell, Riell Truth. What's that you say? Yes, I am the author of Riell Truth, Stay Angry, which you will find online. Spectacular book about conspiracy and about truth. You'll notice the word truth keeps coming up because truth is a sacred thing. Truth is not to be meddled with. It's not to be fiddled with. Now, we were talking about the Democrats before and how out of touch with the Democrats Joe Biden is. But the Democrats themselves are out of touch with America. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to let Glenn Beck do my talking for me. Go ahead, Glenn.
Let's make a list of the things that the Democrats are so out of touch with the average American person. Okay? Venezuela. They're on the wrong side of Venezuela. Clearly, I think. Okay? Clearly on the wrong side of Venezuela. The free market and socialism. Now, that one's not as clear because so many people hate capitalism now. But once people really get that they really are about the end of the free market system, that is going to be horrible for them.
And it's definitely what Republicans believe. There's a story today about Republicans praying for Bernie Sanders to be the candidate because they think they can beat him.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's scary though. I mean,
it is
if
scary.
you lose, the stakes are even higher than another candidate.
The border, MS-13. They said that's nothing to worry about. Now they're making a big deal out of MS-13.
Yeah, they said Donald Trump was hyping MS-13.
The border, they're the ones saying that there wasn't a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
We need to show them the crisis. Israel, they're on the side of the Palestinians and anti-Israel, not just on the side of the Palestinians, anti-Israel. On CARE, on the Philadelphia story, that they were nowhere to be found on this story that came out yesterday about this mosque in Philadelphia having this little pageant with kids where they were taught to sing songs and recite poetry about beheading the infidels and washing Jerusalem in blood. I mean, it's intense. Can you think of anything else? What are the things that have said lately that you've thought, this is insane? I can't believe they're taking this stand. Is no one seen? When I saw the Philadelphia thing, they don't care. But, the average person's not going to see that one. No. When I saw where their stance is on Venezuela, the average people, they are going to see Venezuela.
I mean, Ilhan Omar with her anti-Semitism, it was a big one. Some of the stances that Democrats are taking, I mean, you look at, expanding the Supreme Court, abolishing the Electoral College, Medicare for all, reparations. the late term abortion thing is one that we could spend a lot of time on.
Forget about late term abortion. The Democrats now want post-birth abortion, which in a more honest time in human history was simply called killing children.
Silencing speech.
So yeah, Democrats on issue after issue after issue are out of touch with the average American. They're out of touch with reality too. I mean, how bizarre do you have to be as a human being to say, as the governor of Virginia did, well, a baby will be born and we'll remove the baby from the mother and we'll set it out on the table and then we'll have a talk with the mom and decide if she wants to kill the baby or not. You've got to be mad to say that. And as they just said in that video, of all the 22 idiots running for the Democrat nomination, not one has come out against that. So, if you are in my listening audience right now, and you have no objection to murdering babies, then by all means, vote your conscience. But also seek out the help of a psychiatrist and or a clergyman. Item from Fox News: President Trump has pardoned a former Army lieutenant who was convicted in 2009 of killing an Iraqi prisoner suspected of being an al-Qaeda terrorist, the White House announced Monday evening. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders cited broad support from Michael Bahana of Edmond, Oklahoma, quote, from the military, Oklahoma elected officials, and the public, including 37 generals and admirals, along with a former Pentagon Inspector General, as the reason for Trump's clemency grant. In light of these facts, Mr. Bahana is entirely deserving of this grant of executive clemency, Sanders concluded. Unquote. My friends, when we have soldiers killing Iraqis, my God, they should be getting medals, not jail sentences. Item from the Hill: Senator Rick Scott and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got into a heated online exchange on Monday after Scott took a jab at the Green New Deal, and Ocasio-Cortez shot back that it was embarrassing that a sitting U.S. senator could say something, quote, lacking so much critical thinking. Scott later claimed Ocasio-Cortez didn't understand sarcasm and that she embarrassed both herself and Congress as a whole. Unquote. Rick Scott is correct. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has the intellect of a Q-tip. Make no mistake about it. She's in Congress because she's got brown skin and a vagina. And that's the Democrat Party also. I want you to think about that. We'll take a break. I'll be back. I'm not going anywhere.
energy crisis of the 70s, a lot of people can. We can. The best way to insist about saving money and increasing health. The best way to get and live stress. The best way to insist all can. But you're not rich. With that stuff with your health. Even if you're all the best way to insist. The best way to help our country all by themselves. 43 years later, a lot has changed. A lot of our competition has come from the past. We're still family and property, still self. You're still taking our country. Best way in place. Founded in 1972. 333 469 0808. That's 303 469 0808.
My friends, the Democrats have turned into an angry, unreasonable mob. So says Judge Jeanine Pirro on Fox News. Go ahead, Gene. Explicate.
First point.
Now, this pig is from Hawaii, Mazie Hirono. She lies fluently. She hasn't got 40 IQ points to rub together, but she's a stalwart Democrat, and so she will get out there and grill William Barr, who has an impeccable reputation, while her reputation is in the toilet, and make him sound like the second coming of Genghis Khan. Cory Booker. Yeah, I love it when this pain in the ass talks about a sacred trust. She has a sacred trust to be honest for her voters, for the American people, and she violates that every time she opens that gaping maw to hell that she calls a mouth. Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters is just about certifiable. Nancy Pelosi, true piece of snot. Jerry Nadler. Someone ought to investigate this guy because he is garbage from day one. All Democrats. This is Swalwell. He's running for president. He may be the least intelligent person on the Democrat side. Believe me, that is saying something. Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is the oiliest, greasiest politician I've ever seen, bar none. All right, guys, we'll take a break and we'll be back.
Keep listening to KHNC 1360. Not uninterested about news. I know nutrition profile is pretty high into one county. Beautiful being of spring, exercise, meditation, protein, good trade, health, history, family. Everything that makes you a big person. No one is that. Then we will suggest food change. out what the mainstream media. People were pro-America, pro-family, pro-freedom. We are. Stay informed by listening to KHNP 1360. Yeah, KHNP, the heart of work.
Item from Breitbart: not one of the more than 20 candidates for the Democrat Party's presidential nomination in 2020 tweeted this past weekend about the nearly 700 rockets that Palestinian terrorists in Gaza launched against Israel over 2 days. A ceasefire between Hamas, the Palestinian terror organization that controls the Gaza Strip, and Israel went into effect Monday morning, but in the nearly 2 days since the Palestinian attack started, killing 4 Israelis, not one Democrat saw fit to comment on social media about the subject, and there are scant signs that any commented anywhere else. Folks, that's because the Democrats are on the side of the Palestinians. If you're not on the side of the Palestinians, then why on earth would you ever consider voting for the Democrats? Item from Reuters: Brunei's Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah on Sunday extended a moratorium on the death penalty to incoming legislation prohibiting gay sex, seeking to temper a global backlash led by celebrities such as George Clooney and Elton John. Unquote. My friends, all those gay activists out there, they should be in Brunei right now making their feelings heard. Item from Breitbart: a weightlifting league has revoked awards to a transgender weightlifter who claimed to have broken several women's weightlifting records. Quote, "Our rules on the basis of separating genders for competition are based on physiological classification rather than identification," unquote, said a statement from Paul Bossi, president of 100% Raw Powerlifting Federation. Bossi continued, quote, "On the basis of all information presented to the board of directors for this particular case, the conclusion made is that the correct physiological classification is male. Since the lifter's gender classification for the purpose of our rules is not consistent with female, no female records will be broken by these lifts," unquote. They could simply, instead of all that verbiage, they could simply have said, "We don't give awards to whack jobs." Item from Breitbart: the Saatchi Gallery has covered up 2 pieces of artwork after complaints from Muslims that they were, quote, blasphemous because they contain text from the Quran. The pictures depict Islamic script, including the Shahada, the Muslim declaration of faith, on top of nude images. The work by an artist known as SKU aimed to highlight the distinctions between Islamic extremism and the United States. The paintings were part of an exhibition entitled Rainbow Scenes that finished on Friday and offended Muslim visitors called for the pieces to be taken down, according to the New York Times. My friends, we'll stop there. If there is art out there across America that offends Muslims, well, I think removal is called for. No, not removal of the art. I think the Muslims ought to remove themselves and go live in a country that doesn't offend them. Because I am offended by people going to museums and insisting that exhibitions be taken down or done away with. If you don't like the museum, you don't like the art, get the hell out of it. If you don't like the culture, get the hell out of the country where it resides. Folks, that's just called common sense. Now, I'm going to be back tomorrow, about 23 hours from now. More real truth, more common sense, more Judeo-Christian values. And if you're here, I'll take that as a vote of confidence that you also believe that Judeo-Christian culture is the greatest thing that's ever happened to the solar system. There's the music. Okay, guys, I will see you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay healthy, and yes, of course, it goes without saying, stay angry. Hasta luego.